All right, let's talk about a plant that's, well, it's just wild. The Psychopsis orchid. You probably know it as the butterfly orchid, and for a very good reason. But its looks? That's not even the most interesting part. This orchid seems to have found a secret to, I don't know, eternal life? So how does it pull it off? How does this one flower seem to just defy the rules of nature? Let's get into it.
I mean, it sounds completely impossible, right? A single flower stem, just going, pushing out flower after flower. Not just for a season, but for a decade, maybe even longer. And nope, this isn't science fiction. This is the whole mystery behind this psychopsis, and we are going to figure out exactly how it pulls off this incredible trick. Okay, so if you ever talk to an orchid person about this plant, you'll hear one rule. It's like the number one unbreakable rule. Never, ever cut a green flower spike. Seriously, it gets passed down from grower to grower like some kind of ancient secret. But why? I mean, what's so special about this one skinny little stem? To get to the bottom of that rule, we've got to unravel the biological puzzle at the very heart of this plant. Because, its whole survival strategy is what makes it so different from almost any other orchid you've probably ever seen. And this whole secret, it actually has a name. It's called sequential inflorescence. Now, think about most orchids you know. They throw out this huge, gorgeous spray of flowers. They all open up and then they're done. The Psychopsis, though, it plays the long game. It pushes out its flowers just one at a time, one after another from the exact same stem. It's a really clever strategy, right? Persistence over pageantry. And what's so cool is how simple and efficient the whole process is. You can basically think of the tip of that spike as being packed with plant stem cells, what botanists call meristematic cells. So when one flower is done and it fades and falls off, the hormones change. That sends a signal down the stem to the next little node, basically saying, hey, you're up. And then a new bud forms, it blooms, and the whole cycle just starts all over again. It's like this slow, steady, and practically endless relay race of flowers. So this gets us back to why you never cut that green spike. When you cut it, you're pretty much tossing out the entire flower factory. And there are three big reasons why that's a bad idea. First, the spike has backup plans. Let's say the tip gets damaged, no problem. A lower node can just wake up and start a new branch. Second, that green spike isn't just sitting there. It's photosynthetic. It's making its own food, helping power the whole plant. And third, for a slow-growing plant like this, growing a brand new 3-foot-tall spike takes a ton of energy. By keeping the old one, the orchid can use all that saved energy for important stuff like growing new leaves and roots. Okay, so as if blooming for a decade straight wasn't weird enough, this orchid's secrets don't stop there. See, it has this equally bizarre way of getting pollinated. Most orchids that trick insects, they use seduction. This one, it starts a war. And this difference in strategy is it's brilliant. On one hand, you've got what's called pseudocopulation. This is where orchids, like the Ophrys species, pretend to be a female insect. They look the part, they smell the part, and they trick the male into, well, trying to mate with them. But then you have the Psychopsis strategy, pseudoantagonism. It's not trying to be a mate, it's trying to be a rival. See, it bobs around on that super long stem, and it looks just like an enemy bug invading the territory of a big territorial bee. So what does the bee do? It attacks. It goes after the flower to defend its turf, and in the process, boom, it gets covered in pollen, which it then carries to the next rival it decides to fight. It's literally pollination by picking a fight. But believe it or not, the story doesn't end with all this cool biology. This plant's weird and wonderful survival tactics actually ended up having a huge impact on human history. When this thing showed up in Europe, it didn't just catch the eye of a few botanists. It basically ignited a cultural firestorm. So, picture this, Victorian England. The Psychopsis papilio arrives, and people go crazy for it. The 6th Duke of Devonshire sees one and becomes totally obsessed. We're talking funding huge expeditions to go find more. And this kicks off what can only be described as Orchidelirium. The competition was fierce and brutal. Orchid hunters would literally burn down entire sections of forest after they collected what they wanted, just to create a monopoly and drive up prices. But all that obsession also led to some incredible innovation. The Duke's head gardener, a guy named Joseph Paxton, had a problem. How do you keep these tropical flowers alive in chilly England? His solution changed everything. He designed these revolutionary glasshouses made of iron and glass, which became the direct inspiration for iconic buildings like London's Crystal Palace.
I mean, it is just staggering to think about, isn't it? This entire cultural craze, this orchid mania that led to exploration, ruthless competition, and even a revolution in architecture. It was all kicked off by this one single plant. The arrival of this one species literally changed everything. Okay, so this all brings us to today. How can you bring this little piece of living history into your own home and, keep the butterfly flying? Let's get practical. Remember that number one rule we started with? Never cut a green spike? That is, without a doubt, the most important thing to remember. But, like any good rule, there are exceptions. And honestly, knowing when to break the rule is just as important as knowing the rule in the first place. So let's just break it down nice and simple. When should you cut and when should you absolutely not? Okay, if the spike is green and firm, do not cut. Just leave it alone. If it's broken, but the broken part is still green, still leave it. Remember, a lower node might take over. The only time you should cut is when it turns completely tan, yellow, or just dry and crispy. That means it's officially retired. Now, the most critical exception. If you see anything that looks like disease, black spots, mushy areas, you have to get that off of there. Use a sterile blade and remove it because that can spread to the rest of the plant, and for a slow grower, that can be a real disaster. All right, so beyond just taking care of the spike, what does this orchid actually want? What does it take to make a Psychopsis really happy? Basically, what they're looking for is a perfect tropical day, warm, humid, and a little breezy. So they like it warm during the day, but they really need a little temperature drop at night. That helps them rest and it triggers blooming. They definitely need good humidity, between 50 and 70%. And here's the real key: constant, gentle air movement. Seriously, a small fan can be your best friend. Stagnant, humid air is just asking for trouble with fungus and bacteria, and that air movement is the secret to keeping them healthy. And that brings us right up to the modern day, because the story of the butterfly orchid didn't end in a jungle canopy or a Victorian glasshouse. Nope, it continues right now on our windowsills, all thanks to the incredible work of hybridizers. Pretty much every modern butterfly orchid you can buy today comes from one of these 4 foundational species. Think of them as the great-great-grandparents of the whole family. Each one contributed something unique to the gene pool, like the strong growth of Kramariana or the ability of Sandaray to handle cooler temps. For generations, breeders have been playing genetic matchmaker, mixing and matching these traits to create something new. And the results? Well, they're pretty spectacular. You have hybrids like Psychopsis kalihi, which was bred for these massive, super vibrant flowers. Then there's the legendary Psychopsis Mendenhall-Hildos. That one is famous for being incredibly tough and for blooming, you guessed it, for over a decade straight. And now you've got newer hybrids like Psychopsis mariposa, which are specifically bred to be more resilient and just easier for people like you and me to grow at home. They've basically taken all the best parts of those wild ancestors and made them available to all of us. So when you really look at one of these orchids, you're not just looking at a pretty flower, are you? You're seeing a master of deception that starts fights with bees. You're seeing a biological marvel that can bloom for a decade. You're seeing the spark that ignited an architectural revolution and a direct link back to the Victorian era. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What does it truly mean to take care of a living, breathing piece of history like this?